Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take some time to hear the stories that you have been sending in and sharing with us over the past couple of months. This is our Grabbed series. If you are new to the channel, every once in a while I collect some of the stories that you guys have been sharing on the channel through the comments section and through our Grabbed email address. I compile some of the stories that you have shared based on the transits that we've been looking at, and I put together a storytelling episode. This is great because, for one thing, it's one of the best ways to learn astrology. It's great to talk about the archetypes and give lists of themes and combinations and, different kinds of meditations on the archetypes, but there's nothing that replaces hearing people's stories. This is what actually happened, and this is what I observed when these two planets came together. This is a special one at the start of the new year here in 2023, because some of these are people's most notable transit of the year, a bunch of those in here. And some of these are also some of the most interesting stories that I was able to gather based on some of the transits that we looked at in depth over the past couple of months. So I hope you will enjoy these storytelling episodes. And today's episode in particular has a lot of good stories. And it's also a chance for us to reflect when we do these episodes. It's a chance for us to reflect on, why do astrology? What does it bring into our lives? These are some of my favorite episodes ever. Anyway, before we get into it, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Share some of your comments and reflections. I'd love to hear what you guys think about these stories. You can find transcripts of any of my daily talks on the website, nightlightastrology.com. I also want to encourage you, if you ever have a story to share. The name of the series is called Grabbed because one of the names for the planets in ancient astrology in the Indian tradition was Graha, which means to grab or to grasp. Our lives are often seized by the planets. And one of the reasons that we do astrology is so that we can have a more conscious relationship with the gods and with the symbols of astrology as they appear and manifest as the forces of fate in our lives. There is a conscious way to have a relationship with these forces. And the unconscious I don't think the unconscious is like an evil or bad thing either. The unconscious is an integral part of life and the life of the soul. But what tends to happen with the planets is if we're not living a life actively reflecting on the gods and the archetypes and symbols of astrology, they'll have a way of showing up and just seizing us and moving us around like puppets. And some of these stories reflect that. And some of them are also opportunities, you could say, in reflecting on the way in which the planets show up and grab us to learn something, to grow, and to develop better relationships with the planets. So if you ever have a story to share based on any of the transits that we're looking at, use the hashtag grabbed in the comments section. Tell us which transit you're talking about and share your story. Keep it brief. Don't use a lot of chart jargon. Just tell us which transit and what happened. Or email us your story if you prefer, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. Don't share anything that you don't want used in a future storytelling episode like this one. All right. Well, that being said, let us now get into it. I don't know, what is it like? It's like 18 or so really good stories that I got from hundreds. And there are so many good ones I couldn't get to. So please don't be offended if yours wasn't chosen. You guys awesome, overwhelmed with stories that you shared. So yeah, let's get into it. All right. So these are all over the board. Some of them are transits of the year from 2022 and so on. Now, this one is a story about someone when Mars was conjoining the IC in their birth chart in this past year. And they shared this. As transiting Mars was conjoining the IC, that would be a degree that's often associated with home, family, and roots or foundations. That day, a fire broke out in their hometown. The fire was devastating and apocalyptic. Over 1,000 homes burned pretty much to rubble, entire neighborhoods that I knew like the back of my hand gone in a single afternoon. My childhood home, where my parents still lived and where I had been with them just 2 days prior to the fire, was saved by pure luck. It was just an incredibly obvious and mundane manifestation of Mars going over the IC. Mars being associated with things like heat and fire, and going over the IC, a degree connected with home and family. That is a powerful transit for sure, and a very powerful demonstration of a Mars transit, and that was their transit of the year. 2 days before the lunar eclipse, this is another one. On 16th May 2022, which was conjoined my son, I went to a conference and my life changed. The conference had initially been scheduled to take place in 2020, and the tickets were honored this year. It seems fate was at play, as I only went because I paid already and the tickets were non-refundable. Uranus was conjoining my descendant, that's a degree in the seventh house, and applying to my moon, the ninth house ruler. And the north node was tightly conjunct my natal south node and lot of fortune. As a result of the conference, I embarked upon a new spiritual path and training, taking me in a different direction than I ever expected. I finally feel at home, and I feel like I found a bit more of my place in the world. Now, this person also mentioned that they were sitting and talking to a friend saying, gosh, I feel like, Uranus transiting over my descendant and hitting my moon in the ninth house should be doing something. Why isn't it doing anything? And then suddenly she made all these new social connections at a kind of spiritual ninth house type of conference and had a major breakthrough. Great transit of the year. Thanks for sharing that one. Here's another one I liked. This is the recent Venus-Uranus square between Aquarius and Taurus. I work at a wedding chapel in downtown Las Vegas. As you would imagine, we sometimes have some pretty interesting characters come in, and some people are definitely under the impression that just because it's Vegas, anything goes. However, for the most part, our guests are wonderful and everyone behaves themselves. We had a couple come in to get married under the Venus-Uranus square. We were expecting them to be a little quirky because of the wedding date they chose, Friday the 13th, and some unusual floral requests, but they far exceeded our expectations. They showed up and the bride is wearing absolutely massive combat boots and a black dress that has two long slits from the waist down, essentially just leaving a thin flap covering her nether regions. She was wearing no underwear. She lifted the flap and randomly flashed the photographer several times during their photo shoot, and at one point flashed her breasts as well. We have never had anything like this happen before, and our photographer was obviously horrified he won't be releasing those photos. I could not stop thinking about how appropriate this wildly inappropriate scenario was for the Venus-Uranus square. Yeah, that's such a Venus-Uranus thing. I was at a movement party that my wife brought me to. I reluctantly went to a movement party, which was quite a scene, I'll tell you that. But I had fun. It was like ecstatic trance dance, new age dance meditation thing. Interesting. That was my Venus-Uranus experience. That's a good one, though. You'll always remember those people at the wedding chapel. This one is the Sun-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn. I live in Maine, therefore snow and ice are dominant right now. I walked in my driveway, which is dark in color. I was having grieving moments. I looked down at my feet to see a pure black caterpillar. It's dead, of course. It's frozen. I know, yet don't know what to make of this. I was born with a Sun-Pluto conjunction. Now it's back in the sky. This kind of symbolism is showing up for a reason, but I don't know why. It's a beautiful image and a dark one, and definitely a Sun-Pluto kind of image. A dead caterpillar, not yet sort of like an incomplete metamorphosis or something. It's beautiful. It's really dark, but that's really, thank you for sharing that one. This is another Sun-Pluto conjunction. Sometimes it really does mean death. I remember when you said that it was often just metaphorical. Sun-Pluto doesn't literally mean death, but this time it was. I was hoping my father-in-law wouldn't be affected. He has a host of medical issues, but said he was developing a cold the past couple of days. Well, he passed away this afternoon, alone in his home. We live 2 houses down from him. I could have done something had I known. My husband found him just like he found his mother years ago. The sun is also square to his natal Pluto today. Yeah, it's a hard one. And sometimes it does mean death. Sometimes it can be that literal. Now, this is someone sharing a big moment that they had this year when Jupiter ingressed into the sign of Aries. Jupiter entered Aries going into my 3rd house, and I bought a brand new car. After years of driving hand-me-down cars and a period of having no car, I had really become isolated and didn't feel I could do the things I love because transportation was always an issue. Always needing to hitch a lift or schlep it on public transport. One of the biggest things was it helped me to do yoga. This new car has helped me to do yoga teacher training. I'd been putting it off as the studio is across town, and a week-long yoga intensive was 8 hours north of for driving. With the car, I was able to attend the yoga intensive and drive around town to different studios where I'm now practicing teaching. Nice. Jupiter enters Aries in the 3rd. You go to school and get a car. Now, this person is sharing that their transit of the year was September's Mercury kazimi. This is a fun one. Mercury is my chart ruler, sitting right atop my chart at 0 degrees of Pisces in the 10th house. This day, this Mercury kazimi day, was like the sun breaking through the clouds, endowing me with a sense of vitality, well-being, and desire to connect with friends, old and new. Life circumstances in the last few years have been transformative, joyful. I'm a mom of 2 incredible little people, and immensely challenging. Intense astrological transits have either reflected or contributed to this, depending on your view. You know that feeling of walking outside and being bathed in warm sunlight? Feeling enveloped in comfort, warmth, and invigoration? I felt that way the entire day. I felt like my old self, which served as a much needed reminder that we're not actually talking about old self, but rather true self, which is very much alive and vibrant behind the clouds. What a beautiful share. Thank you. That's a wonderful transit. Nice Mercury kazimi. It's great when it comes out that way. Now, here's a Venus Pluto story. I love I love this one. I spent my New Year's Eve night at a lesbian bar as Venus was conjunct Pluto. I am happily in a heterosexual relationship, but have had to repress desires to experiment with women as a result. I still sometimes toe the line as my boyfriend lives in a different state. On this night, I take some mushrooms, and here is where your troubles began. Or your fun. I'd taken some mushrooms, and a result was overwhelmed in the packed crowd of women exuding sexual energy. It was pouring down rain all night, and it was an indoor-outdoor bar, so water was falling through parts of the ceiling, and I ended up soaking wet from the moments I had to step outside for air. My hair transformed from being styled straight to having messy, out-of-control waves, which made me feel like a goddess. It was entirely overwhelming being on the packed dance floor with these tempting but off-limit lesbians surrounding me, touching me, and making eyes at me. It was all so sexy and so wrong. Yeah, that's awesome. At the same time, I felt myself sucked into it. I surrendered to the night and let my lesbian desires be engaged. When leaving the bar at the end of the night, water was pouring down from the sky and gushing down the street like a river. The street was flooded. Awnings and umbrellas on the sidewalk were blowing around in the wind and lifting up from the ground. It was total chaos, a madhouse. The street outside the bar was packed with all these beautiful women, while the downpour of rain and wind was so intense that it made it feel like the world was ending. It was lustful and dangerous and extremely feminine and out of control at the same time. It made me look up in the sky at that moment and give thanks to the beauty of Venus and Pluto meeting on that night. Woo! That was smoking. That was a great story. Thank you. Here is another one from Venus and Uranus. This one happened a little while ago. This one happened a little while ago, but it just occurred to me that this is not the most recent Venus-Uranus, but the previous one, which was the opposition, I believed. On the exact day, it was a company party for the restaurant that I work for. At the party, we had a guy giving out free tattoos. I, along with many other people at the party, had never gotten a tattoo before and decided to do it for the hell of it. They were only small little tattoos, but I thought it was funny how on the exact square of Venus and Uranus, there were spontaneous permanent decisions made on that day, putting art on our bodies, and thought this was a good one to share. Yeah, that's a great one. Totally such a Venus-Uranus thing. Hey, does everyone want to get like little but everlasting permanent tattoos on your body? Yeah, it sounds like fun. Oh, gosh. Okay. This one is heavy and really beautiful. This is a Sun-Pluto story. My husband had some cash sitting on the kitchen table, and later he couldn't find it. He and I both suspected that our teenage son might have taken it. He's done shady stuff like that before, especially when he was 12 to 13. Now he's 16. He's really trying to get his act together, stay out of trouble, graduate from high school. Nevertheless, he seemed like the obvious culprit. My husband confronted him, and he vehemently denied it. We all got into a huge yelling, crying argument with my son, insisting that he has changed his ways and would not take his dad's money. And my husband saying no one believes him anymore because he's broken our trust so many times. Everyone was grumpy for several days, but my son refused to confess, and my husband refused to believe him. Then the sun conjoined Pluto. My husband was getting dressed and put on a pair of pants that he had worn about a week before, and the money was in the pocket. My husband offered a heartfelt apology, and my son accepted it. Yeah, it's an intense Sun-Pluto karma around, especially father-son karma with the sun and Pluto, for sure. Yeah, that's really interesting. This is a good one from a dream. Occasionally people have really strong showings of the planets in dreams. I thought this was a great example of a Sun-Pluto dream. I run barefoot along a narrow strip of dirt on the side of a gridlocked 5-lane highway. The thin path is covered in piles of dog poop. Eventually, I step in a pile. Screw it. I run without concern for the excrement. To my destination. To get to my destination, I have to weave among the stopped traffic. I find myself running between two tall black semi-trucks with wood slatted sides. Dang, I think. These trucks are sure parked close to each other. Eventually, I can no longer squeeze between them. I swear loudly. This startles the livestock within the semi's cargo hold. They moo and pee in response. Cow urine splats on the truck bed and rains all over me. So I'm standing in gridlock traffic, squeezed between two semis. Oh yes, I've stepped in shit. And I'm covered in cow urine. I can't I can't call for help or I'll startle the cows and get peed on again. I'm thinking this will be really, really fun when I get out of here. Even then, there's a huge bubble of laughter and mirth expanding within me. This is ridiculous and this is good as it gets. I love that. Such a bizarre dream, but I love that you can't escape from excrement and shit just sort of hemming you in. Something about the laughter and finding yourself in the middle of all of that and accepting it and finding the absurdity in it feels like a very Sun Pluto like moment. There's a release, or there's a joy somehow, like a sun in something really dark and something, associated with Pluto and excrement. Love that. That's a really beautiful dream image. So this is Pluto conjunct Venus. It just struck me, Pluto conjoining Venus, clearing out the loft, finding birthday cards from when the girls were 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, their favorite dresses and toys. What to do now they are rising 16 and 18-year-olds, but then a box from the old house, packed 10 years ago when we moved, suitably dusty, dried out cardboard and the tape lifted, leaving the top flap easy to flip open. I shrieked as my eyes met a perfectly preserved, large, dried, dead rat on top of the newspaper-wrapped items, yellow and weightless. It seemed frozen in mid-reach. 10 minutes later, after much horror, the box is stood in the bath with its contents being gingerly unwrapped and shaken off and washed by me, passing wrappings to my partner of 18 years. Inside the box, amongst other things, were the brass candlesticks he was given as a baby. Still much to sort in the loft, so we have to keep going, but he's promised me he'll put proper lights up there. Yeah. Wow, such a Venus-Pluto moment where there's almost like, it's interesting that there was a moment with your partner around death and nostalgia and also your girls, Venus as a signifier of daughters, and transitions in life from youth to loss of innocence, getting older, all that kind of stuff. Very Venus Pluto. Something about that is just spot on with the symbolism. And we don't need to necessarily know what it means. It's enough to know that the planets decide to speak, and we can know that they're doing something. They're at work somehow in the deep recesses of the psyche. And yeah, it's a beautiful story. Thank you for that. This is Jupiter moving into Aries. When Jupiter ingressed into Aries, I woke up to a bright blue sky and birdsong out my bathroom window. It almost felt like the spring equinox instead of the day before the winter solstice. For several months, I had been mulling over the decision to cancel a paid monthly membership to a community I've been part of for over 2 years. Had been taking advantage of all the membership perks for quite a while, but I had been hesitating to cancel because the online community forum was a rich and vibrant space through which I had learned a lot, had invaluable support, and made a few good friends. I knew that I was staying just for the forum wasn't necessarily worth the monthly payment when finances are tight, but I'd been holding on for emotional reasons and sentimentality. Within a couple of hours, Jupiter, the ruler of my ascendant and 10th house sun, moved into Aries. I spontaneously decided to cancel my membership. I don't know why I assumed I would have until the end of my current pay period, another week and a half or so, to still be in the online forum. In fact, the email explaining how to cancel clearly stated that it would take effect immediately. I canceled my membership and then immediately went into the forum to write a heartfelt message of gratitude, love, and goodbyes. I was halfway writing the message when I was shut out of the community. At first, I thought it was just a technological glitch, but I soon realized my error in judgment. I felt bereft and burst into tears. I know it was the right decision, but I certainly hadn't wanted to end my relationship with the community without saying thank you and goodbye. It would have made so much more sense to write the heartfelt message and then cancel a couple of days later. But instead, I suppose I was grabbed by Jupiter and Aries and just did the thing I'd been ruminating on without much forethought. As I've often heard astrologer Rick Levine say of Aries, ready, fire, aim. That's great. Rick's got it. He's nailed it right there, right? Yeah, that's such a Jupiter in Aries moment where the decision to do something is at hand, so you just do it, and then all of a sudden you have to deal with the fact that you just did it so quickly and impulsively. Wonderful Jupiter in Aries story. Now, this was a Sun-Neptune square. My adult daughter and I clashed over religious beliefs. When she was a child, I grew fundamentally Christian, gave up holidays, etc. Eventually, I left religion altogether, invested a lot of study into other religions. We all became atheists and moved on. This is a Sun-Neptune transit. Age 14, she came out as trans and slowly transitioned to male. This year, she decided to transition back to female at age 23 and to become a Christian again. I worried about her becoming fanatical, hoping it doesn't get worse. Well, yesterday she was talking about giving up holidays and going down the same route that I once did, being so serious and fanatical as a Christian. I was devastated. We discussed it afterward. I told her it's difficult for me because I feel like I've been down that path and it's the wrong one. She said she feels the same about things like being transgender. She was once on a path and now it doesn't feel right anymore. I guess it's a perspective shift for me. I have to let her do her own thing. That's a beautiful, and it's so interesting because the Sun and Neptune, especially when it comes to religion or ideology or belief or taking what you're feeling inspired to do with your life path, it can be Sun Neptune can embody any kind of fanaticism. It can also be about just following the breadcrumbs and for one season of life, we might have to try something and do something. It doesn't make it wrong necessarily. It doesn't mean that what we've tried that didn't work has to have been wrong any more than the thing that we're trying now in order to, the thing we're doing now has to somehow make everything we did in the past, valid. Like, well, now I'm doing the right thing. And so, that excuses all of the wrong things I did previously. There's something about the Sun Neptune that asks us to consider that, every season of life leads us to the next one, like breadcrumbs. Anyway, I found that to be a very beautiful Sun-Neptune kind of experience, that this conversation came up about life path and which is the right path or the wrong path. Here's a Mars opposite Venus story. This is Mars retrograde opposite Venus. Strewn across the parking lot outside my studio, I found 3 mysterious anonymous notes written on notepad paper, the ink smudged from being rained on. Each had 2 sets of lines, one at the top of the paper, one at the bottom, and is written both forward and backward in places. What's written? Destroy pornography, ban pornos, no pornography, make pornos illegal, don't pornographic home videos, no pornography, you hate looking at porno videos, make it illegal now, pornography is evil, etc., etc. Can only imagine the writer's conflict. Very interesting to find that as Mars is opposing Venus. Mars in Gemini, Venus in Sagittarius, I guess that would have been. Let me just trying to make sure I've got that right. Yeah, that would have been Venus in Sagittarius opposite Mars retrograde in Gemini. It was around the end of November, early December. That's an intense one. Yeah. And I think you're right. You can only imagine the writer's conflict. Here's someone with Mars retrograding in Gemini in the first house. I first reported that the day of the Mars ingress into Gemini, August 20th, I went into AFib. While Mars is retrograde and approaching my ascendant within 1 degree again, I had ablation on November 29th. Mars is my out of sect malefic. It was good to see that transiting Mars was in trine with transiting Saturn the day of the procedure. Also good to see a few other aspects that they felt were good. This all felt stabilizing to me. Everything went as planned. I'm really curious to see what comes about when Mars passes over my ascendant again, direct in February. Yeah, well, our prayers are with you. It's really interesting that this has been such an intense health transit for you. Interesting that you would have AFib when Mars goes over the ascendant, comes to within a degree of the ascendant again, and you had ablation. I hope I said that correctly. Here's Mars retrograde opposite Mercury. I just confronted my husband's cousin that dropped a bomb of family drama on my lap a few years ago. We live in the same town and haven't heard from her since this incident. My approaching her and conversing happened at the gym, jumped on the treadmill next to her. Hi, remember me? Yeah, we need to talk. I let her know about the collateral damage her actions caused for myself. My husband's family isn't confrontational at all, and told her that's not how I handle things. And told her, well, that's not how I handle things. So I expressed what's been on my mind and heart and said, you really need to be careful how you approach these types of matters. I called her out. So Mars retrograde opposite Mercury. Someone that did something, dropped a bomb of family drama on your lap, and then you didn't see her since. You saw her at the gym. You hopped on that treadmill and you talked to her. You do it. I love it. That couldn't have been easy. Well, Venus opposite Mars. Here's another one. This is Venus and Sag opposite Mars. The day before the Venus-Mars opposition, I placed a call to a local florist to order flowers for my boss who is retiring. I planned on presenting the flowers to her at our final meeting. I spoke with the florist and let her know that the flowers were for a very special occasion, stressed the importance that the flowers be super fresh, that they would not wilt overnight. I placed the order on Wednesday to be delivered to me on Thursday since they couldn't deliver flowers the day of the meeting, which was Friday. Long story short, delivery guy shows up on my doorstep Thursday afternoon with the saddest looking bouquet I've ever seen. The arrangement was haphazard, looked nothing like the picture. Flower petals were curling on the end, starting to brown. There were rosebuds that had obviously been plucked to the floral bone. I immediately called the florist. She apologized and refunded half my money back. But wait, the story doesn't end there. I spoke to my mom the next day and she egged me on to get the rest of my money back. Now I'm really boiling. I called the florist back on the day of the Venus-Mars opposition and let loose, demanding my money back. The florist asked if I would send her a picture of the flowers. For some reason, I was totally obstinate and refused. I said, I'll drive these flowers down to the store and give them back to you in person, but I'm not taking pictures. For some reason, I just didn't feel like co-op. I can just imagine like this random thing to be stubborn about. For some reason, I just didn't feel like cooperating, even though I had the evidence. I had pictures. Then I said I could have gone to Trader Joe's, bought the flowers myself, and made my own arrangement. Would have blown these out of the water. There was more conversation and then apologies on both sides. And I actually had to call back the next day to get it completely taken care of. In the end, they were really nice and very accommodating, and I did receive a full refund. But afterward, I found myself apologizing to the flowers. I told them they were still very beautiful, but were not presentable for the occasion. I think they understood. That's a beautiful story, and so Venus opposite Mars. Well, as I hear these stories, they give me, first of all, they teach me astrology, and that's valuable on its own. That's an incredible benefit. But they also remind me of so many beautiful things. They remind me that when you're watching a fire burn down your hometown, you're watching the gods. It's a fire, but it's also the gods. That changes what it means to have a hometown burn down, even if it still sucks. You can wait and wait and wait on a Uranus transit, and it will still surprise you. And that's a beautiful thing about that planet. You could see every kind of strange, weird, funny thing in a wedding chapel, but you've never seen Venus and Uranus until you really see Venus and Uranus. And it's amazing that someone flashing the camera, that you could see them and see the fingerprints of divinity. It gives you a different kind of laughter and a different kind of appreciation for the absurdity of what's happening. It gives you a cosmic patience and compassion and laughter. Someone might look on the ground in a driveway on a winter day, seeing a dead caterpillar and go, oh, it's kind of gross and sad. But if you're an astrologer, you'll see Pluto, and you'll see the symbolism of the sun and Pluto together. And that little moment can be like an atom bomb of truth. Sometimes Pluto really does mean death. It's not the death card. It's not a metaphor. Someone 2 doors down from you will die. And your partner will find them. But you'll know that Sun Pluto was there too. You'll know that when you get the new car, that it's not just Jupiter in Aries. It's a car that is going to embody the transportation and mobilization of wisdom, right? It's not just a car that you got. It's the god of wisdom entering the house of transportation and learning. That's a different kind of car. People say, oh, cars, like people who have relationships with cars it's kind of weird. Not if you are friends with the planets, it's not. You'll never have a car that doesn't have a connection to the heavens. Someone might say, hey, you're in a good mood today. But because you know astrology, you see that your chart ruler is seated on the throne of the sun. And the way that you shine and the way that you feel can be the best day of your year because you feel like suddenly you're given the seal of the king or queen in the sky. It's different. It's living a different life when you take the planets in like this. The planets will take you on a rainy night into the underworld with the goddess and will leave you tempted and disheveled and possessed by what is taboo. And it will, in that sense, connect you to thousands and thousands of years of goddess worship and of the need to honor our instincts and desires. And how could you do that? It's so helpful to have Venus and Pluto to thank when you come out of that dance club and your hair is wavy and you're feeling like a goddess. You can say, thank you, Venus and Pluto, for bringing me into the underworld, for letting me touch you. And then it's no longer just about, am I a lesbian or am I not a lesbian? Or it's about something so much bigger. They see little tattoos happening at a party, but we see the gods, Venus and Uranus, making little etches into our skin. The planets see our hidden wealth and our hidden resentments. They see the hidden wealth stuffed into the coat pocket. They see a father who's still holding on to resentments and accusations and old pains. And they see a son that's still living with the feeling of being under the shadow of a father's resentment. And Pluto and the sun bring it all up so you can see it and you can let go. How could that? I mean, that sequence is a beautiful sequence on its own, but put into the context of the sun and Pluto, that sequence is every sequence that all fathers and sons, parents and kids have gone through, purging ourselves of our failures, our shortcomings, our assumptions about one another. The planets, when you see shit in a dream, you can trust you can trust that it's not just shit and pee and excrement. You can trust that there is life-giving, soulful substance because you know the planets are there. So the planets, they say goodbye. They say goodbye before we know how to. Losing my place here. Let me go back up. The planets help us to say goodbye before we know how to. Our kids will age and we'll be going through things in the attic. They'll still be living in our homes. You'll see Venus and Pluto come together in the sky. You'll find a dead rat on top of a box full of their stuff, and you'll realize I'm in the process of saying goodbye to them right now. They're aging. They're going to leave. The planets let us know that we're saying goodbye to things before we even know that we're saying goodbye to them. And that's a beautiful gift that we receive from the planets. The planets reflect every transition that we might make of any kind, every exploration, every changing of mind, body, and heart that we go through, and they never condemn us, they never judge us, but they reflect within every season of life the divine nature. Every transition, every exploration, every changing of mind and body. They're not sitting there going, well, you had it wrong here, but now you've got it right. Instead, in every season, they simply show us a reflection of eternality. The planets reflect torn up notes in parking lots, the wrestling of our angels and demons, and they sanctify our mental struggles. They give room for them. The planets will literally stop our heart beating and then beat it again. The planets are often the conversations that we are really having. You think that you think of how your day is going to go, and you end up on a treadmill next to someone at the gym, and the planets say, now this is what we're talking about today. If you have the planets there, you can say, well, that was okay. Guess that needed to happen. Guess it was time for that to happen. In every way, if we spend a life including the planets, they bless us with appreciation, with gratitude, with beauty, with absurdity and humor, with curiosity. They give a place for everything. In an astrological cosmos, everything has a place, even obscure, bizarre things. If you live an astrological life, you will find that you may spend your entire day cursing a florist only to capture a glimpse of what the planets are doing and make sure you apologize to the flowers. I can't imagine my life without the planets, and I hope you guys feel the same way. Thank you to everyone for sharing today. I really appreciate it. If you ever have a story to share based on any of the transits that we are looking at, use the hashtag grabbed or email us your story, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. That's it for today. Take it easy, everyone.